Sometimes you have to come to a place where you just accept things the way they are. I know it's hard, I know it's difficult, but when you understand that there's power in acceptance, you can unlock the doors that life has been trying to open for you all along. The truth is, peace doesn't come from controlling every circumstance around you. It comes from trusting God, trusting the process, and accepting that sometimes things just are the way they are. Now, let me give you 5 key things to understand about this powerful principle of acceptance. Acceptance is not defeat, it's deliverance. Listen to me now, because I need you to hear this deep in your spirit. The enemy has been lying to you, telling you that when you accept things as they are, you're giving up. He's trying to convince you that when you stop fighting what you can't change, you're somehow losing. But I came to tell you today that is a lie from the pit of hell. You see, there's power in knowing when to stop fighting. There's power in knowing when to say, God, I surrender this to you. I give it to you. The moment you accept what is, that's when you step into the divine flow of God's purpose for your life. Because God doesn't need you to control every outcome. He doesn't need you to manipulate every situation. What he needs is for you to step back, accept what's in front of you, and allow him to move. Somebody needs to get this right now. When you accept, you let God work. Think about it. How many battles have you fought that weren't even yours to fight? How many times have you spent sleepless nights trying to change a situation you had no power over? You fought with your mind, with your words, with your energy. And what did it get you? It only wore you out. And the more you fought, the more the situation stayed the same. But when you shift your perspective and accept it for what it is, that's when the doors to deliverance open up. You see, deliverance doesn't always look like you think it will. It doesn't always mean that God will change your circumstances in the way you expect. Sometimes deliverance is a shift in your heart, a shift in your mind. It's when God delivers you from the battle you've been fighting on the inside. It's when you no longer feel the need to control everything around you. It's when you can look at a situation that should have destroyed you and you stand tall because you know you're no longer fighting in your own strength. You're fighting with God on your side. Acceptance doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise. The reason I say it's deliverance is because it sets you free. When you accept something, you stop wasting energy on things that cannot be changed. You stop wasting time on situations that are out of your hands. It's in that moment of surrender that you step into freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from worry, freedom from frustration. The moment you accept what you cannot change, you release the burden from your shoulders and you open yourself up to the peace that only God can give. But understand this. God doesn't want you to keep carrying burdens he never meant for you to carry. You've been walking around with a load so heavy, trying to fix things that were never yours to fix. But today I hear the Lord saying, let it go. Release it, accept it. The moment you do that, you'll feel the chains fall off of you. That's deliverance, beloved. And here's the kicker. You can't have victory without acceptance. You can't have peace without acceptance. You can't have the blessings God wants to pour out into your life until you learn the power of accepting the process, accepting the place you are in right now. Sometimes you're waiting on God to change the situation, but he's waiting on you to accept where you are. I'm telling you, this is not defeat. No, this is deliverance in disguise. It's God's way of freeing you. It's God's way of saying, I've got this. The minute you surrender, the minute you accept, that's when God steps in and says, now watch me work. You see, when you accept, you stop trying to change things. And that opens up space for God to do what only he can do. You stop worrying about what's next and you start focusing on the present. You stop stressing about what you lost and you begin to appreciate what you have. And in that place of acceptance, you're in alignment with the will of God. That is deliverance, my friend. That's when you're truly free. Sometimes God doesn't change the situation, he changes you. I need you to hear this today. Sometimes God doesn't change the situation, he changes you. And I know, you've been praying, you've been fasting, you've been crying out to God saying, Lord, change my situation, change my circumstances, make things better for me. And it feels like God is silent. It feels like God is distant. But what if I told you that God is not interested in changing your situation the way you expect? What if I told you that he is more concerned with changing you than he is with changing what you see? I feel the weight of that in my spirit today. Some of you are stuck because you're focused on changing everything around you, and God is focused on changing everything inside of you. We are so quick to ask God to move the mountain, but sometimes God's answer isn't to move the mountain, it's to strengthen your legs so you can climb it. You see, God is in the business of transformation. He doesn't just want to change your circumstances. He wants to change your perspective. He doesn't just want to give you a new situation. He wants to give you a new strength, a new wisdom, a new endurance. God doesn't just want you to get through the storm. He wants you to come out of it transformed. He wants you to come out of it stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who he is in your life. I've come to understand that sometimes the situation is the very thing God uses to shape you. The struggle is your shaping place. You've been wondering, why hasn't this storm passed? Why am I still in this trial? Why hasn't God delivered me yet? And God is saying, I'm not waiting to change the storm. You see, when God doesn't change your situation, he's preparing you for something greater. He's preparing you to handle a blessing that you wouldn't be able to handle if you weren't stretched in the season you're in right now. There are things inside of you that you haven't even tapped into yet. There are strengths inside of you that you haven't even discovered. But the only way those things can come to the surface is if God allows you to go through the fire. Now, let me tell you something. Fire doesn't feel good. Oh, I know it doesn't. Fire refines. Fire burns. But without the fire, there's no purity. Without the fire, there's no gold. Without the fire, there's no breakthrough. That situation, that storm, that struggle, it's part of the process that refines you, that prepares you for the calling God has on your life. God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't waste a single moment of what you're going through. Every tear you've cried, every sleepless night, every moment of confusion, none of it is wasted. He's using it all to shape you, to mold you into the person he created you to be. I know you've been asking for deliverance, but God's been saying, I'm not going to deliver you from this until I get you to a place where you are unshakable, unmovable, and unwavering in your faith. You see, God is more interested in your character than your comfort. He's more interested in your spiritual maturity than your temporary happiness. And I know you may be saying, but God, why do I have to go through this? Why can't you just fix it? Why can't you just take it away? And God is saying, because I'm doing something in you. I'm making you stronger. I'm making you better. You're going to come out of this with more authority, more wisdom, more strength, and a deeper anointing than you've ever had before. God doesn't change the situation because he's using the situation to change you. You see, the moment we realize that God isn't in the business of just changing our circumstances, but of changing us, is the moment we begin to understand that he's always been in control. You've been frustrated, you've been tired, you've been feeling stuck. But what if God is trying to teach you how to stand? What if he's trying to teach you how to walk by faith and not by sight? What if he's trying to teach you how to trust him even when the situation doesn't make sense? What if he's trying to show you that even in the midst of the storm, you can have peace? I know it doesn't feel like it right now. I know you're wondering, when will it end? When will things get better? But God is saying, I'm making you into someone who can handle what I have for you next. You've been asking for an increase, but God's got to increase you first. Been asking for blessings, but he's got to mature your spirit before he pours out everything he has for you. This is a setup, beloved, a setup for transformation, a setup for elevation, a setup for breakthrough. When God doesn't change your situation, it's because he's using it to make you into the person who can walk in the purpose he's called you to. Your peace is more valuable than your pride. I need you to hear this today, and I need you to hear it deep in your spirit. Your peace is more valuable than your pride. Let me say it again. Your peace is more valuable than your pride. Too many of us are holding on to things that are robbing us of our peace simply because we're too proud to let them go. We're too proud to admit that we can't handle it on our own. Too proud to say, I need help. Too proud to apologize. Too proud to forgive. Too proud to just walk away from situations that are draining us. And let me tell you something. Pride will cost you your peace. It will steal your joy, rob you of your sleep, and leave you restless in your spirit. I'm here to tell you that peace is priceless. You can have all the money in the world, all the success, all the accolades, but if you don't have peace, you have nothing. Nothing at all. Some of you are walking around with your heads held high, but your hearts are heavy. You're holding your head up because you want people to see your strength, but deep down, you're exhausted. You're holding on to your pride, but your peace is slipping away bit by bit. You're trying to keep up appearances, trying to show that you're unbothered, trying to act like it's all together, but in reality, your soul is crying out for peace. Why? Because pride keeps you in a cycle of conflict. It keeps you tied to things that no longer serve you. Pride tells you to stay in toxic relationships, to keep fighting battles that aren't yours to fight, to hold grudges that are destroying your spirit. Pride says, you're right and they're wrong, but peace says, let it go. Forgive them. Move on. Pride wants to prove a point, but peace wants to protect your heart. You've got to understand this. Peace isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. It's a choice you make every day. It's the decision to let go of things that don't serve you, to walk away from people and situations that drain you, to refuse to let your pride dictate your peace. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say, I'm not going to fight for this anymore. I'm not going to argue over this. I'm not going to hold on to this anger. I choose peace. Peace is the foundation of your future. Without peace, you'll never be able to move forward. You'll never be able to embrace the blessings God has for you because you'll always be looking over your shoulder, always in conflict, always tangled up in the mess of things you can't control. Peace allows you to let go of the past, to forgive the things that hurt you, and to move forward with a heart that is free and unburdened. But pride keeps you stuck. It keeps you fighting the same battles, living in the same drama, wrestling with the same issues. It won't let you go because pride has this way of telling you, you deserve an apology. You deserve to be right. You deserve to be vindicated. But what if I told you that peace is more important than all of that? You can be right and still lose your peace. You can be justified and still feel empty inside. Sometimes being right isn't worth the cost of your peace. I'm going to say something that might hit hard for some of you, but it's the truth. You cannot let pride keep you from the peace God wants to give you. Sometimes that means swallowing your pride and walking away. Sometimes that means letting go of the argument. Sometimes it means saying, I forgive you, even when you don't fight it. Sometimes it means taking a step back and letting God fight the battle for you. Let me tell you something else. God will protect your peace if you let him. He will protect it. He will guard it. He will keep it safe from the distractions of life if you make it a priority. But too many of us are letting our pride take control. We're letting our pride keep us in situations where we're miserable. And God is saying, I've got peace waiting for you. All you have to do is surrender the prize. Peace is your weapon, beloved. It's your armor. It's your strength. And when you protect it, nothing can shake you. No weapon formed against you can prosper, because your peace will guard your heart. The enemy will try to steal it. He'll try to bring confusion. He'll try to stir up strife. But if you hold on to your peace, your acceptance opens the door to transformation. I need you to hear this in the depths of your soul today. Acceptance opens the door to transformation. I'm talking about a deep, life-altering transformation that begins with one simple but profound act: accepting things just as they are. We've been taught to fight, to struggle, to resist every situation that doesn't match up with our expectations. But I want you to understand something powerful right now. There's a miracle waiting for you on the other side of your acceptance. When you finally accept, you're not just surrendering to the circumstances, you're surrendering to God's purpose, God's plan, and God's timing. Now, don't misunderstand me. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean that you're weak or passive. No, it means you are brave enough to admit that your way isn't the only way. You are humble enough to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. And in that humble, honest place, God can step in and begin to work in your life like never before. Now listen, there's a power in acceptance that is often overlooked. It's not about merely accepting the situation. It's about accepting that God is still in control, even when the situation seems hopeless. It's about saying, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I trust God. And the moment you embrace that truth, the moment you release your need for control and trust his sovereignty, that's when the doors of transformation start to swing wide open. Think about it. When you accept, you open the floodgates to God's healing power. When you accept the pain you've been carrying, you give God permission to heal you. When you accept the past that's been weighing you down, you give God room to restore you. It's in that beautiful moment of acceptance, when you let go of the fight and release the burden, that God begins to pour his peace into your heart, his strength into your soul, and his vision into your mind. But here's what I need you to catch today. Acceptance doesn't always come easily. It's a struggle for many of us because we don't want to accept what we can't understand. We don't want to accept the hurt, the loss, or the disappointment. We want to fix it, control it, make it go away. But I'm here to tell you that there's something more powerful than your control. It's your willingness to accept and trust God with what you can't fix. And let me tell you something. When you accept what you cannot change, God begins to change you. Yes, he does. He begins to transform your mind, renew your spirit, and elevate your faith. When you stop wrestling with what you cannot control, you open yourself up to receive the fullness of what God has for you. You step into a new level of grace, a new level of power, a new level of peace that transcends all understanding. Imagine for a moment, beloved, what would happen if you accepted the things you've been running from? What would happen if you stopped trying to resist the struggles that are part of your journey? What if you started embracing those moments of pain, those moments of uncertainty, and said, God, I don't know why this is happening, but I trust you, I accept it, and I know that you're going to use it for my good. The minute you do that, transformation begins to take place. When you accept your weaknesses, God strengthens them. When you accept your failures, God redeems them. When you accept your flaws, God perfects them. It's in that vulnerable place of acceptance that God's mighty hand begins to mold you, shape you, and prepare you for the next chapter of your life. Now, I want to ask you something. What are you still fighting? What part of your life are you still struggling to control? What part of your story are you refusing to accept because it doesn't fit the picture you had in your mind? It's time, beloved, to let go of that fight. Stop wrestling with the past. Stop wrestling with your circumstances and start accepting that God is doing something greater in you than you can see. God is using your pain to prepare you for the blessing that's coming. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like the situation. I know that it's hard. I know it's painful. I know it's confusing. But acceptance is saying, I may not understand it, but I trust God with it. And I promise you, beloved, when you make that choice, when you open your heart in that way, transformation begins. God will transform your heart, your mind, your relationships, your future. But it starts with acceptance. So today, right now, I want you to choose acceptance. Choose to release the fight, choose to surrender the struggle, and choose to trust God with the things you can't control. When you accept, you open the door to God's transforming power. And let me tell you something, once that door opens, you'll never be the same again. Trust the timing of God. I want you to hear this deep down in your spirit today, beloved. Trust the timing of God. I'm not talking about just waiting. I'm talking about trusting that God's timing is always perfect. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know you've been praying, waiting, longing, and hoping, but it feels like nothing is happening. It feels like your breakthrough is taking forever. And I know you've been asking, when, Lord? When will my change come? When will you move in my life? When will I see the answer to my prayers? And God is saying, trust the timing of my plan. Trust that I am never late. Trust that I am working behind the scenes in ways you can't see. Trust that I know the exact moment when I'm going to move in your life, and it's going to be greater than you can imagine. Now, let me tell you something about God's timing. It doesn't always line up with your timing. I know you've got your clock, your schedule, and your calendar. You've got it all figured out in your mind. You've got plans and you've got deadlines. You've got your timing mapped out. But God doesn't work according to your timetable. God works according to his divine purpose, his perfect will, and his sovereign plan. And when you align yourself with his timing, you'll see that everything unfolds exactly the way it's supposed to. Here's the truth. Waiting on God's timing is not wasted time. It's preparation time. It's growth time. It's learning time. God is not in a hurry, but he's always on time. And just because things are delayed doesn't mean they are denied. Just because things haven't happened yet doesn't mean they won't happen. God is working behind the scenes, and sometimes he's got to get you ready for what's coming before he can release it to you. When we talk about trusting the timing of God, what we're really talking about is learning to surrender. We have to let go of the need to control everything. We want things in our own time, in our own way. But let me tell you, if you rush God's process, you will miss the blessing. If you push too hard to make it happen, you'll step into something that wasn't meant for you, and you'll find yourself in a mess. But when you trust the timing of God, he will lead you step by step, moment by moment, into the very destiny he has planned for you. Think about Joseph, beloved. Joseph had a dream, but his timing was off. God gave him a vision of greatness, a promise of elevation, but the path to get there was not what he imagined. He went from the pit to Potiphar's house, from Potiphar's house to prison. He was mistreated, misunderstood, and overlooked. But Joseph had to trust God's timing. And when the time was right, when God had prepared him, God lifted him up and made him second in command of all of Egypt. God's timing was perfect. Had Joseph been elevated before his character was formed, before he was ready, he would have fallen under the weight of that blessing. But God's timing was not just about Joseph's destiny. It was about Joseph's preparation. And I need you to hear this today. Your waiting is not in vain. God is using every moment of your waiting to refine you, to shape you, and to get you ready for what he has for you next. You see, God doesn't just want to give you a blessing. He wants to make sure you're ready to carry it. He wants to make sure that when he opens the door, you will walk through it with the wisdom, the strength, and the grace to handle it. I know the waiting feels long. I know it feels like nothing is happening. I know you've prayed and prayed and prayed, and it feels like God is silent. But hear me, beloved. Silence doesn't mean absence. Just because you don't hear from God doesn't mean he's not working. Just because you trust that he is working in ways you cannot see, orchestrating things behind the scenes, lining up circumstances and setting things in motion for your good. You see, God's timing isn't just about waiting for the right moment. It's about making sure that you are ready for the moment when it comes. Your heart needs to be prepared. Your spirit needs to be strengthened. Your faith needs to be stretched. God's timing is not just about when it happens. It's about making sure that you are the person who can walk in that blessing and handle it with grace. And here's another thing. When it's God's time, no one can stop it. When God says it's time, the doors will open. When God says it's time, the promotion will come. When God says it's time, the breakthrough will happen. No devil in hell, no person, no circumstance, no force can stop what God has ordained for your life. When God speaks, his word will not return to him void. When God's timing comes, everything will fall into place. And everything that was held back will be released in abundance. So I want to encourage you today, don't rush God's process. Don't try to speed up what he's doing in your life. Trust the timing of God. Trust that his timing is perfect. Trust that even when you can't see it, he's working. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place. God is about to do something in your life that will blow your mind. He's about to open doors you didn't even know were there. He's about to make ways where there seems to be no way. But you have to trust his timing. It may not be when you want it. It may not be how you want it, but it will be exactly when you need it. It will be perfect.